might be thinking, where in the world are we? Well, we're in the middle of a field of weeds, but this is the Kimberlite Mine site. They called it Kimberlite when they first found it because that's what they called the intrusion over at the Crater of Diamonds. They thought it was Kimberlite. It wasn't until many decades later that they realized the Kimberlite was actually lamperite. And what's the difference? Very little bit. Only geology geeks really care whether it's a Kimberlite or a lamperite. But the lamperites have fewer pyrope garnets in it. Okay, no big deal. And some other minor differences. But the Kimberlites, okay, the way this stuff got to the surface, the diamonds were formed more than 100 miles deep in the diamond stability zone, and there was earthquake faulting all through this area due to a deep rip in the crust. Well, a lot of times with an earthquake, if you've got, a crack opens up, things fall in, they don't come out. Well, with a kimberlite, they are gas driven, CO2 gas. There's enough gas pressure over 100 miles deep that it blows acres of kimberlite to the surface. Well, lamperites, this is one distinction between a lamperite and a kimberlite. Lamperites tend to be steam driven. In other words, hot water, blows them to the top, and that's how we get diamonds to the surface. Geologists believe that here in southwest Arkansas, they were kind of a combination of intrusion. Because of the shape, they figured they were gas and steam emplaced. So a kimberlite will be kind of like carrot shaped because the gas blows it up, and the pipe leading down the 100 miles is shaped like a carrot. You can imagine that. Well, with a lamperite, it's kind of champagne glass shape. It'll come up a narrow neck, and as it gets close to the surface with less overburden holding it back, then it blows out kind of like a champagne glass does. Well, they drilled at the Crater of Diamonds State Park, and they determined it's more of a martini glass shape, kind of like a funnel. So it's kind of a hybrid between the carrot and the champagne glass. It's martini glass or funnel shaped. But anyway, lamperites in southwest Arkansas, but this was called the Kimberlite Mine when it was discovered. Now in August of 1906, at the spot we now call the Crater of Diamonds State Park, John Huddleston found the first diamonds in situ, or in the ore. First time in the United States. Actually, first time anywhere outside of South Africa. Now, diamonds have been found in India, but they were found in stream beds and they didn't know the source. But anyhow, the first time outside of South Africa, diamonds found in their natural volcanic material was August 1906, John Huddleston at the site we now call Crater of Diamonds State Park. Now, what's typical of kimberlites and lamperites, where there's one, there's more. Because of that deep rip in the earth and earthquake faulting and then the volcanic activity, over eons they brought up more than one pipe. And here in southwest Arkansas, we have 7 known intrusions. We've got what's called now the Crater of Diamonds State Park, and it is the largest, about 78 acres. Now the state park is 911 acres, but the volcanic material is 78 acres and the search field is 37 acres because a lot of what was intruded is a magmatic lamperite that doesn't have diamonds in it. So on the search field, they try to kind of pinpoint you to your best chances for finding a diamond. With all that said, let me go back in history a little. So the first diamonds found in 1907. By 1909, well actually before that, in 1909, they started mining here at the Kimberlite. We're 5 miles away. We're in the middle of the woods. I don't know how they found it. I really don't know. But people were really looking in order to find this, because there was no road back in here then. There's no road back in here now. I promised to take you to all the sites of the known diamond pipes in southwest Arkansas. And true to my word, I parked a long way from here and walked back in here, and you think, oh, he's got a double purpose for coming. I see the wheelbarrow and the shovel. He's gonna get him a sample while he's here and find diamonds. No. There are rattlesnakes, copperheads, and water moccasins. 3 types of poisonous snakes in here. And I was using this kind of like a minesweeper this morning, and I pushed my trail in here. I thought, if a snake's gonna get mad and bite at something, let him bite at the wheelbarrow instead of at my ankle. And then this today is not for digging. That is for chopping up my little aggressor in little pieces. But anyhow, I haven't had to use it yet, but it is a long walk in here, and so far it was downhill all the way, and I'm still kind of sweaty from it, and this is early morning, a cool morning. On the way back, it's uphill all the way, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. But while I'm not out of breath, let me talk a little bit about this historic spot. It just looks like, well, a place you could deer hunt or turkey hunt. And you can. I've deer hunted here. But there's history here. Let me tell you about a geologist, Austin Q. Millar, from Minneapolis, Minnesota. His son was Howard Millar, who started the Crater of Diamonds. Back before it was a state park, he started a tourist attraction called Crater of Diamonds. Years later, when he was ready to retire, he sold it to General Earth Minerals, who a year later sold it to the state. And we got a state park, and his name for that park stuck. Crater of Diamonds State Park. Came from Howard Millar, and his dad was Austin Q. Millar. They were both geologists. And Austin Q in 1909, well, before 1909, he was wanting to find diamonds in Kimberlite. So from Minneapolis, Minnesota, he went to rural Kentucky because there was a Kimberlite pipe there, and he wanted to recover diamonds from it. Well, they hauled all this equipment, purchased all this expensive African-style rotary wash pans and all the equipment you would need for a full-scale mining operation to recover diamonds. And they hauled it all back into this remote area in early 1900s, began to excavate and wash, and they learned what we now know, that only 10% of the kimberlites in the world are diamondiferous. In other words, 90% of the kimberlites found in the world don't have any diamonds in them at all. And that's the kind of kimberlite in Kentucky. And Austin Q. Millar had thrown a lot of money and effort in it. And about the time he realized, hey, there aren't any diamonds here, he heard about John Huddleston's discovery in southwest Arkansas, and he came to Murfreesboro to get in on the action. By the time he arrived, a newly formed company out of Little Rock, 3 businessmen had gone together, and they purchased all of Huddleston's property and a whole bunch of the acres around there. And those acres are now Crater of Diamonds State Park. But anyway, he was already too late and locked out. So he had heard that kimberlite had been discovered up here in the hills. We're about 150 feet higher in elevation than the Crater of Diamonds State Park. And so he got a claim on this, and he formed the Kimberlite Diamond Mining Company. Well, in 1909, they got a couple of mules and a slip. It's kind of like a plow kind of thing. So 2 mules pulled a plow, and right in through here, if you look at the old pictures, This is where the workmen were out in the sun, more or less like plowing a field. They were cutting up this disintegrated kimberlite or lamperite and cutting it up and washing through it, while the bosses sat up here in the shade and watched the men out in the sun working. They had them a little shade shelter set up there. And if you look at the old map in my book, now this is the first edition of my book, but I had to get in here and reread about it and find the old map of the Kimberlite Mine. And this, where the camera is, where I'm at, is where that cut went through, where that the two mules were pulling that slip. And besides several long trenches that were excavated using the plow pulled by two mules, there were also 3 or 4 prospecting shafts that were dug down 20 to 40 feet, 20 or 40 feet by hand, digging down. Now that's a hole. They must not have to fill it back in every day like you do at the Crater of Diamonds. But anyway, the company claims to have exposed a large body of completely oxidized kimberlite or peridotite. The Kimberlite mine was more remote than the other mines near Murfreesboro, and the problem they had is the main thing you need for separating diamonds from the ore is water, and lots of water. There's no water up on top of this hill. So they had a problem from the start, but they worked through it and they persevered, and they did find some diamonds. There was an article written in 1927 by Dr. Branner, who was a geologist with the state of Arkansas for many years. Anyway, he wrote an article and said that they had found, I think, quite a few diamonds here at the Kimberlite mine. But with the remoteness, I mean, the commute to work, what do? Ride a mule up here back in 1909? And then once you get here, there's no water to wash the stuff with. So what do? Load it up in a wagon and haul it down to the river and wash it? They had some real problems and battles. Well, by 1912, Austin Q. Millar said, no more mining at the Kimberlite. This just isn't worth all the effort. But they did work at it for 3 years, and they did find diamonds here. What happened about that time, Horace Bemis, who was a lumberman out of Prescott, and he owned the area at the, well, he leased the area that the Moonies owned at the north end of the current day Crater of Diamond search field by the mine shaft building. That was on a separate property, so that wasn't on Huddleston's farm, and that wasn't part of that. But see, when Austin Q. Millar got here, the Mounies already had made a deal with Horace Bemis about mining that northern portion of the present-day Crater of Diamond search field. So he was out, and so he came up here and worked, and it was just frustrating and difficult. Even though they found diamonds, it just didn't work out for him. Well, Horace Bemis suddenly died of a heart attack, and so the contract he had with the Moonies expired. Well, taking advantage of the opportunity, Austin Q. Millar contacted the Moonies and said, hey, let's work out a deal. Let me mine it. I know what I'm doing. I'm a geologist. Horace Bemis didn't have a clue what he was doing. He was a lumberman, and he used a log washer to wash the kimberlite to look for diamonds, and it didn't work out too well. They had the wrong equipment, didn't know what they were doing. So now the Moonies finally had a geologist in there who knew what he was doing. He was sticking with it. He stuck it out 3 years up here at the Kimberlite mine, and he worked out a deal to mine the northern end, and they ended up building a plant by Prairie Creek, which had ample water, and that's what he was lacking here. So problem solved. They built a nice modern diamond recovery plant, and it was completed in 1913. See, he gave up here 1912. He was here from 1909 to 1912. By 1913, he had a modern, state-of-the-art diamond recovery plant built, an impressive building. Watch my video on that. It is quite a structure. And they also fixed a small gauge railroad tram cars to haul the ore from the northern end of present day Crater or Diamond Search Field all the way about a mile and crossed Prairie Creek. They built a trestle for the train to cross the creek and all, and then they had this great plant right by the Mooney house where they recovered diamonds from 1913 until January of 1919 when arsonists burned it to the ground. But anyway, that's a little of the history, but this is a fascinating place. When I worked here in diamond exploration with Star Resources, their predecessor company, Texas Star, had been up here when they first built the plant at the American Mine site, which is real close to here. I walked by it to get into the Kimberlite Mine this morning. When they built this multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art diamond recovery plant in the 1990s, they bought or leased the mineral rights to look for diamonds here at the Kimberlite. And so they dug up some and washed it. I don't know what the results were. They never published it, but they were excited to move on to their other prospects, and they abandoned work at the Kimberlite Mine and they went and dug at Twin Knobs 1. They were excited about it and they spent time there. So this was abandoned because the other looked better to them. So years later, well, Texas Star shut down then for a while, and with the Phase 2 project, they got the plant back out of mothballs. That's when they sampled 9,600 tons of ore at the Crater of Diamond State Park, and they hauled it up here to the diamond recovery plant. Well, since the plant was up and running and the rust was all worked off of the equipment that had sat out in the weather, they decided, let's do some retesting of the Kimberlite mine. And I worked for Star Resources at that time, and we came through their back gate up a little road that's now washed out. See, you couldn't drive in here if you wanted to. You gotta walk. Oh, not a rattlesnake. Okay, good. At that time, Star Resources said, let's re-sample, re-examine the Kimberlite mine. So they sent an excavator, a track hoe, and dump truck over here. It's right out their back gate. It's not far. Dug around, and the guy operating the track hoe really didn't know what he was looking for. But anyway, I was operating the diamond recovery plant, and a different crew was out in the field digging the ore, recovering it, and filling it in dump trucks and bringing it up to us and said, here you go, wash that through the plant. We started to wash it through the plant, and it was full of sticks and rotted vegetation and old parts of trees, and it clogged up the plant, and it was a mess because we had a bunch of gravel pumps, and you get all those sticks and everything in there. It wasn't designed for that. What they had done is, years before, when Texas Star dug there, they just filled their trench, filled their hole back in with a bunch of brush and trees and stuff that they had knocked down anyway, and just filled it in and smoothed it over, and oh, that looks good, we reclaimed it. Well, then years later, they want to go and sample there. They dig down and they dig up all that brush and send it to the plant for us to wash. So it was an absolute disaster. And when I griped about it enough, they said, all right, forget the Kimberlite. And that's not what I meant. Move over, dig somewhere else, get rid of this trash, bring us some real virgin ore, not a bunch of brush. But anyhow, they decide, okay, well, we're not going to do that over here. We're going to go over to Twin Knobs 2 and we're going to sample. And we're going to go over here and sample, and we're going to redig in the American and sample, and just scatterbrained and jumping all around. So anyway, when this was seriously mined, 1909 to 1912, diamonds were recovered. There's never really been any serious attempts since. Nowadays, with the modern equipment, you could get a good road in here. You could get a well. You could build a lake to hold your water for diamond recovery. So this could be mined. It's owned. A man bought it, a married man, and I think it was his idea here. And I found a pit or two on the way in. I think he must have sampled around. Well, he has since died. And I've contacted his widow, and she's like, well, I'm not ready to sell it yet. So, anyway, it's not for sale. Still owned by the people that Star Resources sold it to when they pulled out. So, anyhow, this is the Kimberlite Mine. There's a lot of history here. I mean, activity was going on in diamond recovery 111 years ago on this spot, you know. So 1909 to 1912, this looked different, and they were finding diamonds here. And I promised to take you to all 7 of the diamond pipes outside the state park, and this is one of them, the Kimberlite. And I think there is diamond potential here. Somebody just needs to tap it.